And I think I've been taking a video of this, so you probably want to check the video because I've been explaining test 3. And we're at the point now where we're on the last question. How might predicate logic be used to represent ethical principles in philosophy? Provide an example. That's really neat. I love those questions. ChatGPT helped me make this up. And in fact, let me stop sharing this one and then go back. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so let me get to my meeting and let me share again. And there, and I want to go to this. I mean, you could see I even asked ChatGPT to help me with a reference letter for someone who does not use he or she pronouns. I have one of those students. She actually has her PhD. They have their PhD. I have so much. And I like Judith Butler and Judith Butler's explanation of why. Because Judith Butler see, I'm stuck. I need the grammar to, they support the idea that there are 450 possible genders. And it's a matter of role playing, performance, Judith Butler calls it. Oh, well, all right. So let's look at the latest thing that I've done. For example, each of the questions I put in, so here's the question. How might predicate logic be used to represent ethical principles in philosophy? Provide an example with a logical expression. So that's question 6 that I just on the test. And here's ChatGPT's response. By the way, ChatGPT framed the question, and I asked it to answer the question. So not only did it give me a great question to add for test 3, but it actually gave me a great answer for it. But you could have different answers. I mean, obviously. In fact, I thought to myself, what happens if the student just gives me this answer that is actually an A, right? I mean, because I'm not asking you not to. Yeah, I mean, you can certainly use your sources, and I mean, I'm doing that. Remember Rodney Dangerfield? The last scene of the movie Back to School, I think it was. He had the whole room was full of tape recorders, and the teacher's tape recorder was running up in the front, so nobody was there. But the example that they pick is the principle of beneficence. Notice I already used the word beneficence today because I had read this and it was in my mind. Consider the ethical principle of beneficence, which roughly states that individuals have a moral obligation to help others when it is within their ability to do so without significant harm to themselves. This principle can be expressed in predicate logic as follows. By the way, I believe that principle of beneficence is Kant. I haven't checked, though. But it sounds like Kant. So number 1, you need a list of your definitions or an index or whatever you want to call it. Define the predicates. So let P, x, y, mean X is able to help Y. By the way, I did not talk yet about relational predicates, something that predicate logic enables us to do with the symbol system is something that you don't have available to you in Aristotelian logic. In the statements that Aristotle gives, all the predicates are basically very simple, one way, you know. All S is P, no S is P, right? Some S is P, some S is not P, right? That's it. Well, what about X helps Y? That's a statement that could be certainly true or false. Ooh, well, how do you handle that, Aristotle? You know, and Aristotle, of course, is, as we historically know, didn't deal with relational predicates. So here we have relational predicates. P, X, Y. X is able to help Y. I mean, how would Aristotle handle that? He would just put that as set, make that a set. The whole set of those that are able to help Y. And so you wouldn't have the relationship available to you in the statement itself. It would be already enclosed in the category, those things that help Y. Just in case you were puzzled over that, that's how that would have been dealt with. The question is this more powerful? Is this a more powerful system? I think everyone agrees that it is. Second predicate, let H, X, Y mean X helps Y. Notice it's not playing with H as a subset of P, which immediately strikes me as something you might be, interested in, because if you have P as a set, X is able to help Y. Within that, you would have H, X helps Y, and maybe not H.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That's another subset of P, right? But let M, X, mean X has a moral obligation. And this is a cop-out because it doesn't say what that means. I mean, for Kant, and that's why I think this is a Kantian moral principle, it's clear that individuals intuitively know that they have a moral obligation. The hard part is actually getting yourself to do it. For Kant, the good person is the person that does what they know is their moral obligation. The person that is weak, maybe even evil in a sense, is the person that knows they ought to do something but doesn't. And usually the issue there is that you're putting your neck out. It's a better expression for that. You're putting your neck on the line.
Or like we used to say in the Army, take the hard right instead of the easy left.
Thank you. So let N, X, Y. Notice the X, Y are variables. So you could put, let P, Socrates, Euthyphro. So Socrates is able to help Euthyphro, which he did, because he confused the heck out of him and he left, right? Sorry. But let N, X, Y, mean helping Y would not cause significant harm to X. That's actually terrible, because I would want there to be embedded somehow in this the negation, the negation itself, because when you make a
I get it though.
when you make a symbol represent a negative, when the system itself is really positive, and then you can put a negative sign in front of it.
But I think what it's kind of getting at in that structure is like the set of these things, but in Aristotle's way, is not the set of these, or in no way So if they overlapped, it would cause true false.
By the way, everyone, can you hear when Brandon speaks? Because he's far away from the camera. Did you hear him speak? Or is your coffee not working? Could be your coffee isn't working.
Off if you can hear us.
So, you might want to speak louder if you can. So, okay, now let's put this all together. We get a logical expression of beneficence for all x, for all y. Pxy and nxy, then mxhxy. Okay, how do we read that? And they very nicely. No, I've read this already, so I knew that was coming, so I didn't change how I read that. Instead, they explain for every individual x and every individual y, if x is able to help y, and helping y would not cause significant harm to x, then x has a moral obligation to help y. So they've taken a moral principle and put it in the context of predicate logic or propositional logic. I've got to be careful. I'm confusing the two of them. They're this is predicate logic, actually. Propositional logic includes predicate logic. However, so now we have an explanation of the expression, which is part of the question, right? The universal quantifiers for all x and for all y indicate that this principle is meant to apply to all individuals x and all individuals y. Remember, those are variables. And if you want to instantiate a particular individual like Socrates, you do actually have to use universal instantiation in the proof. Okay, so the antecedent, P helps Y, or X helps X. How did I already forget what that means? If X is able to help Y, okay. So the antecedent, if X is able to help Y, and
It would cause harm.
X would not cause harm to Y. Remember, the negation's embedded in that one, represents the conditions for the obligation to arise. So therefore, X is in a position to help Y. This is the explanation, right? And XY, helping Y would not cause significant harm to X. So the consequent, which isn't there, right? You would have to add this, as I recall. Yep, it's, there it is. There's the consequent over here. The consequent of the if then. So the consequent M X H X Y represents that under these conditions, X has a moral obligation denoted by MX to perform the action of helping Y denoted by XHY. I'm looking at the grammar of this in the symbol system. You know what? That's incorrectly written there. It has to do with the parentheses. Because you don't have a comma. I mean, the comma separates two statements.
Oh, yeah.
So basically what we've got is the comma meaning this is the end of that first statement here, and this is the conclusion. this is the conclusion. And yet they have it all in parentheses, so that's grammatically incorrect. So ChatGPT, you screwed that one up.
Oh, I see. It should be actually, instead of a comma, one of the three parentheses on the outside right should be there instead.
Yeah, there's no connector here.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that's a grammatical mistake. That's not a well-formed formula. Shoot. And I've already included, well, I already included it. No, this is your part of the test. Not, okay, so there you go.
This is the answer.
So you could do a better job than ChatGPT. So explanation of the expression, the universal quantifiers for all x and for all y indicate that this principle is meant to apply to all individuals x and all individuals y. For anything you pick, for anything else you pick. And by the way, it didn't have a non-identification or a non-identifier or non-identical clause, which would be an x is not identical to y.
The negation.
So that means that the computer's possible confusion is really high. Because if you're talking about for anything you pick x and for anything you pick y, x and y certainly could be the same thing. And so if you're having x help y, what if x is y?
Mm-hmm.
I can see that. That's self-help.
I think it's ironically funny that you confuse an AI, quote unquote, with an ethical question, because the AI thinks in binary. And you just ask it how to use
large
binary.
large language systems or whatever, this ChatGPT is considered AI, yes. But from what I understand it's doing is it's figuring out what word should follow this one. What
Yeah,
word
true
should
falses. Yeah.
You know, so this, to me, any conflict with what it's giving us here would indicate that the database it's pulling on has, this has happened before, and it's always traceable to human error. If I may quote Hal, actually I'm not quoting Hal.